Welcome to Port Townsend News. I've had this Facebook page for 12 years, nearly 13 years now. A lot of people think it's new and I'm new on the scene, but I've been reporting corruption in Port Townsend for the last 10 years on and off. Haven't been listened to, but I've still been reporting it. I've been fighting corruption for about 25 years, and it was a spiritual calling. It was a vision, and if you've seen my prior videos on that, it's always been spiritual to me. It's never been political. When I first got involved, I was shocked that the Democrats went at me. I was an out lesbian already by then, 25 years ago, into alternative things, spiritual things, New Age, witchy things. And it was the conservatives who stood behind me when I started speaking out against corruption. Interesting, right? So anyway, you don't have to watch this page. People come here and then they like to criticize me, but it's not like it's required reading. So, moving forward, what we're going to be doing here on this page is more of the same, but different. I had to sue through my church, Universal Church of Light, for public records from the city of Port Townsend. They've denied public records to conservatives, to Democrats, to pagans, Christians, people all across the board that supported anything against what I call the hive mind, which turns out it's indivisible Port Townsend. And so we've had to sue to get public records. So I've got a lot of them now, and I've been sharing them for the last 3 years regarding the Jaman event at the YMCA. Now, the indivisible hive mind like to call it an anti-trans thing. That's why they attacked us at the press conference. They labeled us as anti-trans. They labeled us as something that we weren't. We were there to stand up for an elder in our community who was banned for life from the YMCA, which we thought was unjust. Now, in the locker room that day, was it a trans issue? Was it who has rights to the bathroom? Was it a bathroom law issue? No. There was no way for this local 80-year-old woman to know that the person who obviously had male anatomy and a deep voice believed they were a woman. There was no way to know that. There was no way to know that this person was a YMCA employee. There was no identification. The person didn't say, I'm an employee, didn't explain anything. I don't have an issue with the person because, being new, being young, it was a management issue. And it got out of control. Now, within 24 hours, the Port Townsend city manager incited the entire community based on what he believed was the version of the story told to him by the YMCA CEO, which she believed from the YMCA manager, which the YMCA manager believed from the employee. There was no investigation. There was no listening to Julie's side. Immediately, the entire Port Townsend police, the city attorney, city staff, all city resources was put to go against Julie Jaman. Now, the indivisible hive mind, through public records, we see to council members that it was a proxy for a national issue for them. They were willing to hurt us physically, to violate our rights, to shut down our Port Townsend event, permanent event on city property, because of who they believed we were, because of their own inner trauma, and for a national issue. It was never anti-trans. It was never a national issue. It shouldn't have been blown up. Within the first 24 hours, city manager John Morrow sent an email to all of city staff to let them know that the right thing was to back the YMCA. Now, the YMCA has an independent operating agreement, and there is no reason that the city should have been involved. There's no duty that John Morrow had to the YMCA. Now, in I'm Reverend Crystal Cox, my ethics complaint against John Morrow, he complains, I complained, his defense is that he had a duty to support the YMCA. Okay, so he's saying that he had that duty. Now, did he have that duty for the public? Did he have that duty? Now they're trying to say maybe he had that duty because it was on city property. Did he give that duty to past YMCA issues? Did he provide that to you guys at the golf course, your business there? Did he back you on any issue that any patron had? Did he do that for KPTZ or any business that's on city property? There's no history of the city ever doing this before. Morrow is arguing that it is the duty of the city manager to have backed the YMCA. If it's his duty, then he has that same duty to all local nonprofits, or at least with their argument, maybe nonprofits that are on city property. Has he given that duty to all of you, nonprofits on city property, equally? No. Did he do the same thing for prior incidents to the YMCA? No. Because this is such an issue that they've blown out of proportion, they made it an anti-trans issue. Within the first couple days, Morrow labeled Julie Jaman and her supporters as anti-trans and incited the entire Port Townsend community to hate Julie and those of us who supported her. Whatever reason. They didn't know if we supported her because we hate trans people or whatever our reason was. They didn't know our political party, religious beliefs. They just hated us because we supported Julie Jaman, because of what they believed happened in the locker room, because of what the hive mind spread quickly. And the city backed it with your money. They hired a PR company, a crisis management company, to defend the YMCA's version of the story. One example is they claimed that there was a documented record of disrespect and ethics codes violations, policy code violations by Julie Jaman. Julie asked for these records because the city said it. They put it in their public statement. And Julie said there was no record. Well, she asked for the public records on that. The city ignored her. And so did the Port Townsend Free Press, and other Julie Jaman supporters asked for the public records proving this statement that they'd made as a fact. And the city ignored it. And I've seen in public records where Morrow sent that public records request to other people in the city, and to the YMCA and the PR firm, and told them not to answer it, which is a Class C felony to deliberately deny public records. How do you enforce that when your top law, Prosecutor James Kennedy, is indivisible, when they control the police force? Okay, so it's not a crime until James Kennedy says so. And we've seen recently him speaking out at the No Kings rally. He's indivisible. We see Bruce Cohen, one of the heads of Indivisible, that was supporting him and supporting Judge Mindy Walker. I'm going to do some videos about Bruce, his KPTZ interview, and all the hypocrisy of being excited about people who stand up against government, where he attacked me for standing up against government. And so Port Townsend is not ran by regular Democrats. It's ran by the group Indivisible. They are more politically active than regular Democrats. So they're out there campaigning and running for office, and they control the Port Townsend courthouse. The court clerk also recently spoke at the Port Townsend Indivisible. So the prosecutor spoke. So they have selective prosecution. They get protective orders to shut down your speech. They jail and go after who they want based on their own ideology. Went after a homeless man because he couldn't afford cream for his dog's incurable skin condition. James Kennedy violated a court order. Judge Mindy Walker gave him the smackdown. Judge Mindy Walker, My Sally's Rescue whistleblower, went after her even though she's autistic, a vulnerable adult. She abused her, if you've seen those hearings. So all of the Port Townsend large nonprofits, all of the government, the commissioners, the city council, all of it's indivisible. So if you want change in Port Townsend, you got to have new candidates. You're not going to probably get a conservative candidate through, but a regular Democrat is very different than what's running Port Townsend. The group Indivisible is who's running Port Townsend. And they threaten to kill us. They assault us in the streets. They put pride flags over our face. They make fun of us online. They bully people who order public records requests, which is legal. Me and my ethics complaints, I have over 20 criminal charges for things like sending in documents. The Jefferson County Sheriff deputies and the city police filed criminal charges against me because I had protective orders against me by these folks for sending them legal documents. It says right on the protection order that it is a no contact exception. So this is false reporting and malicious prosecution, which are crimes. Who's going to make those crimes happen when your prosecutor's part of it? Okay. I got criminal charges for ordering public records against people they didn't think I should have. Never had criminal charges in my life. I've had death threats and constant harassment, stress, court hearings because I filed an ethics complaint. So after the press conference that night, I decided to get out my investigative blogger skills and expose these people because I couldn't understand what led to 400 people attacking us 11 speakers. Now, we were in the Rainbow Mini. It was, bisexual, lesbians, there was Christians, there was pagans, there was witches, there was lesbians, there was a very diverse group, the most diverse group you can imagine in Port Townsend. And why would 400 people hate us that much that they would do what they did? Felony assaults that night. The mayor's law firm come in and protected them so that they didn't have no charges. James Kennedy, the prosecutor, worked with them. All the charges went away, even assault on an officer. So I needed and wanted to understand this. So I began getting public records and digging into the story. I created enough evidence to pitch it to a civil rights attorney. So Julie's local attorney and I kept pitching it to different attorneys until we found one. And we found a civil rights firm to represent Julie. And then they had question after question. And so I kept explaining over and over through documents and through evidence of how the city and the YMCA violated Julie Jaman's civil rights. Now, if I was Julie, I wouldn't have settled for that amount of money. And I understand that she probably needed to. She's 80. I don't know the situation there. But the city was in the wrong. They violated our civil rights. They violated our First Amendment rights at that event. And they need to be held accountable, not only for the justice of the people that experienced the event, but also so they don't do it again. Now, a lot of the gals moved away. Several of them moved away. Most of them couldn't leave their homes for many days. I'd see them in the store then, a month or two down the road, still traumatized. Now we're nearly 3 years later, I see them in the store, they're still traumatized because they cannot believe somewhere that they've lived for decades would do this to them. For what reason? I mean, you see people downtown Port Townsend at events talking about all kinds of things. You go, oh, that's not for me, and you go home. You don't get 400 of your friends to attack them. But because this is the indivisible group and they made it a national issue, they were willing to have our lives, our body, our mental health, the collateral damage of their proxy war. They actually called it that. One of the top indivisible people in Port Townsend sent to one of the council members, remember, this is a proxy war. This is our living, breathing body. This is our community members. I hear the No King speeches, including the stuff that Bruce Cohen had said and the stuff that James Kennedy said. And I pointed out best I can, they don't care about that locally. Locally, it's selective prosecution. It's it's bullying. It's kings and dictatorships, and we'll tell you what we want. And they hid all of the support that Julie Jaman had. They took away the voice of the majority of Jefferson County, and they gave it to a small majority that lives here in Jefferson County, Port Townsend. But that small majority controls all the nonprofits. They control the government, the courthouse, the prosecutors. They control the police, right? So the sheriff, the deputies. So they always win. Well, they haven't won against me because I'm not afraid of death. I didn't have any prior criminal charges. I still don't have criminal charges. All the stuff that the deputies sent to the prosecutor, to all the criminal charges they sent with probable cause for malicious prosecution, the prosecutor said they weren't prosecutable. I mean, they're not prosecutable offenses. They just did it to torment me, to interrogate me, right, for telling the truth. And so it's really important for Jefferson County, Washington to understand that it's not regular Democrats that are running the show. It is the group Indivisible. Now, one of the council members runs Libby Winstrom runs the Indivisible Facebook group. Another council member, the new one, Neil Nelson, was promoting the Indivisible groups. We saw recently where Mayor David Faber was promoting the indivisible groups. So they want taxation without representation, I keep saying, because they want your money, but they don't want you to have a voice. They listen to your questions at city council because that's required by law. But they don't ever answer your questions, right? And if you email them stuff, they just go, received. They don't ever address any of the issues. So I've sent them tons of documented facts of things that have happened to people in the community over the last 10 years, over the last 5 years, and they ignore it. So instead of making benevolent changes, creating positive change for the community and engaging, their solution is always just to silence me. They went so far a couple months ago to have an emergency hearing to change the ethics code policy for the entire community to try to stop me. Well, it didn't work. My mission is spiritual. I'm not political. I've never been. I support Trump because I've been fighting exposing corruption for decades, and I know what he's doing. I know what's behind it, and I know it's right. And I've been investigated and targeted by those same people at the top, Perkins Coie, Sussman Shank. The same courts have happened to me. I've been in no less than 60 court cases across the United States, and I've represented myself in all of them except for my Ninth Circuit appeal in Obsidian versus Cox, which the hive mind keeps saying I owe millions of dollars for, and even attorneys in it, and ignoring that I won my Ninth Circuit appeal. They keep defaming me and claiming I'm defaming them. They keep bullying me and claiming I'm bullying them. So, back to the YMCA story. So, what the city did there, so Morrow, within 24 hours, engaged the city attorney, all the city leadership. Your money went to all of that, to the police force, right? To the point of 7 police officers watching us get the smackdown. Now, at a permanent event in Port Townsend, should the police be there? Well, at our second event, the guy said, well, it's a permanent event, we're required to be here. You can hear that on officer cam. But in general, they might have an officer come to an event or whatever, depending on the people. So was the officers required to be at our event? No, not necessarily. But because they were there, we couldn't get help. So, like 20 911 calls because people were being assaulted. On officer cam, you can see officers like Mark Titterness saying there's assaults happening, right? And yet he ignored it. And he even bullied one of the women the next day. And I'll share that with you. You can see one of the other officers saying, Officer Schrift saying, if there's a crime they think happened, they can report it later, right? People come up to him and report felony assaults, right? People getting hit, people getting smothered, assaults in progress, and they're like, if you don't feel safe, leave. How can we leave, right? People are on top of this. You had that Officer John Stewart say, don't get involved in that, right? Basically telling the officers to stay out of it while they're watching our assault. 911 was called so many times that finally the state police came in, and then the Port Townsend police, minutes later, as you see in officer cam, pretended that, we got this handled, we got this, we got that. Still kept watching our assault, okay? Felony assaults, they watched. Thefts, they watched us get kicked and hit and pushed into bricks. They watched us get screamed over and our First Amendment rights violated. They did nothing. Now, earlier that day, Chief Olson had signed a dispersal order. Now, in charge of dispersing the crowd, if it got unconstitutional, unruly, like it did, then Sergeant Jason Greenspan was in charge of dispersing the crowd. You can see him on officer cam after telling Alex French, one of the assailants, first of all telling him that he wouldn't see any jail time, and then telling him, he goes, well, I was doing other things, I wasn't even there. So the guy in charge of our bodies, our lives, our mental health, protecting our constitutional rights wasn't even there, because they were on a security duty for City Hall. Now, in the Morrow ethics complaint, he says they weren't. Well, in the incident action plan, which my church had to sue for because they redacted it all, it says they were on a security duty. And it also that they redacted that Greenspan was in charge of the dispersal order. A lot of stuff they redacted. They planned for a riot. They even tried to get the riot police, right? And yet did not even bother separating the groups. They planned for hazmat and all kinds of stuff for the police, but didn't even give us fencing. Morrow sent out a high alert at 1 p.m. that afternoon to City Council. I don't know if he's just trying to create a record for the public record. It certainly wasn't true. He said that the police, and that he was going to separate the groups. We had no separation, not even a little bit of fencing. No police. It was deliberate smackdown of us for their national agenda. The email the day before, or that Chief Olson, emailed the city manager and said that he was going to bring in one group in the back door. He said it was for separation of groups, and Morrow said, that's a great idea. So it's a special privilege, right? It's favoritism to let one group in. Meanwhile, the other group had, not only were they pushing us against the wall and keeping us out, but they lined up around the block. They kept us deliberately out of the meeting. Now, before the city council meeting, the organizer of our event, Amy Sousa, had worked with Chief Olson, and we were going to get equal access. Us 11 speakers that went there had 3-minute speeches we were going to give to City Council. We were denied access to the building. They said, oh, fire hazard, it's full, right? Because they filled it with their people deliberately and didn't let us in. They only let a few people in the front door. For Morrow's case to be plausible, anything that he said, if you read the documents, if it was a separation of group, you'd have let some groups in the back and some of the other group in the front. They didn't. After the August 15th council meeting, you can hear some of the council members going, oh, that there wasn't anybody here from the other side, right? They didn't even care. Then later, when it came out of what we experienced, they just gaslighted us. Oh, Antifa doesn't exist, right? There was militant men there, all in black. They had guns and batons. Olson said in one paper they didn't, right? The officers are coming out and telling them they have it. He knows that they have guns. There's an officer cam that says they know that there's 100 Antifa there, confirmed, an hour and a half before our event. They didn't tell us. They didn't make any effort to protect us. And our group, a lot of 80-year-olds, and they knew this ahead of time. I seen Faber interacting with the Black Bloc group on Twitter, Mayor Faber. And I seen this group organizing people to come to Port Townsend. And I sent that to Amy, and Amy sent that to Chief Olson, and he said he'd handle it. So not only did they know an hour and a half, before the event, so everything they knew, they didn't bother any fencing, nothing to separate the groups at all. And they had the capability to do it. They were deliberately giving us the smackdown to silence us. Later on social media, they said that if we tried to come back to the town square, they'd do worse. Okay, they threatened to kill us. They harassed us, and they used politics, large nonprofits. The newspaper at the time, the Port Townsend Leader, was completely in on it. They're not now. They have new owner, new editor. Julie Jaman didn't have a voice at all. She couldn't do a letter to the editor. The paper never reported her side of the story, and they lied about the group being anti-trans. They didn't know who we were or what we represented. They just made all this up for their national agenda. Now, as we see them having their indivisible group, they're getting bigger and bigger in Port Townsend. All the things that they're preaching, they go directly against locally, for those of us who live here, real, living, breathing human beings. But they act like they're for this for people in other countries. They act like that they want to shut Trump down for all these reasons. But all those reasons happen to our group and continues to happen all the time on social media. And we represent every sector of society. Every group out there, our group represents. It's only for their beliefs and their hive mind. And so, back to the YMCA incident, within 24 hours, Morrow had got all the city resources behind it. Hired a PR firm within a few days, got the city attorney involved. He says, I didn't hire it, the city did. He hired him. Now, not only did they hire a PR firm, but they let the YMCA CEO narrate the city's Q&A, which was an official statement to the public that all city staff was told, and all YMCA staff, send all media members of the public to this Q&A. The YMCA CEO narrated it to their version. The example of the documented, of Julie having a documented history of breaking the violations and being disrespectful didn't exist. Now, Morrow knew this. There's an email that's come out recently through that lawsuit you probably saw on the front page because they redacted it. They redacted all that information saying that it was a client-attorney privilege, but they brought in other city employees. They redacted it because they didn't want the public to know that Morrow says right there he didn't know if there was a documented history of disrespect or code violation. Julie said there wasn't, but yet they put it as a statement of fact on the city website with your resources. They used the city newsletter. They used all the city resources they had behind them to push a story they knew was false. Morrow also has emails and texts to the YMCA CEO asking about the bathrooms. He didn't even know. It wasn't an issue of whether the state law of the bathrooms. They made it into that. But this email and this text to the CEO, Wendy Bard, from John Morrow, asking her about the bathrooms, he didn't even know. Now, you can see from the Rebel News interview and from Morrow's emails that there was no place for Julie to go that day, separate. But yet Morrow said in a city council meeting there was a place, a separate facility for Julie Jaman to go to, and that she chose not to go there, and she chose to verbally abuse the staff member. City Council abused Julie and her supporters and continue to do it. They continue to deny what happened. Morrow continues in the ethics complaint to say he had a duty to do what he did. So Julie was in the audience that night, City Council, she's like, no, there wasn't another place to go. They didn't even look at facts on the other side. No investigation whatsoever took the YMCA side within 24 hours. Okay. Now remember, they're also privileged. Indivisible group is all that can lease city's property. Look at the KPTZ articles, the things I'm posting now in the Morrow complaint, where they put out their standard to lease. It's cheap lease, right? And you have to be part of their hive mind. You have to be compatible with them to lease city property. All city resources go behind them. You pay all the taxes to support whatever their story is, with no investigation at all. They'll hire PR firms, put all city staff, city police, city resources to give you the smackdown, and your tax dollars pay for it. Now, they are not the majority of Jefferson County. They are not the majority of the Democratic Party in Jefferson County. They are the group Indivisible. Now, it's took me 3 years to put it all together of how all this works. But the YMCA issue is huge in its own, but it also happens in every other issue. You can see through public records that Faber handpicked the shareholders for the golf course group, the Sims Way group. They pick their shareholders and they say, oh, the shareholders are independent, and this was what they say, so they push their agenda. Most of the public is behind what they wanted to do at the golf course, behind what they wanted to do in the Sims Way tree issue. But the way they paint it out, that the public wants this, and they have their public meeting, public discussions to make it look that way, but it's the group Indivisible, that's the candidates and the shareholders. Okay, and they run city council, they run the courthouse, they run the government in Port Townsend, and they go after us with that, with the government, with the law, with the police, with the prosecutors, with the judges, on social media. They attack the newspaper if they report on it. Okay, it's up to you to make change. It doesn't really affect me in my life. As I said, I'm not political. This is a spiritual mission for me. I've had visions, I see what this is, and I'm doing this for the Great Spirit. What you, the public, do with it from here is up to you. That's your business, not mine. My business that I've made my business, my spiritual business, is to bring the light to this story, to bring accountability. Okay, it's not okay to pick and choose who gets public records. It's not okay to give Libby Winstrom public records about me to use against me in court, while at the same time denying me public records for a year, deliberately, willfully, knowingly, and maliciously, and breaking the law, costing the city $100 a day, okay, by the Washington Public Records Act, and then claiming I'm costing the city, claiming this is my business model, this is how she makes a living, and having no idea how I make a living. Just saying, well, that's what she does. She does the ethics complaint. She picks victims because she wants to sue for public records. When the Jaman incident happened, I let them out of 3 years of public records that they'd already denied. This video is wrapping up here. So anyway, believe me, don't believe me, it doesn't matter to me. I'm providing you the public records, the documented facts, and it's up to you to decide what you believe and think individually. I just want you to know Morrow had no duty to do what he did at the YMCA, and that the Indivisible group is who runs